Yeah, I can hope. Yeah.
Okay, everybody, we're going to get started here because we know everybody's on a time restraint here. We really appreciate our people from Lawyers Title, Greg Schneider and Mike Merlo.
Yes.
Correct? So I'm going to let Greg give the background, but we really appreciate the time and effort because this is huge on foreclosures. So, money, we're starting. All right. And we're being recorded, so we appreciate that. If you all could just raise your voices when asking questions, we'd really appreciate it. We're also experimenting with our webcam down in Redondo office, so we can see how we're trying to perfect that. So we appreciate your working with us. Okay, take it away, Greg.
So anyways, I'm going to just kind of turn it over to Mike right away. Mike is, I guess, officially the advisory TO now. Is that your new title?
They just call me a guy that hangs out in the office sometimes. So
Mike basically what I consider him is, in the past I've had Randy Vial when it was Lawyers, and then we were all our separate companies when we were merged. Basically Mike now has stepped into kind of the Randy Vial role. Very knowledgeable. So I'm going to go ahead and let him do this and ask him any questions. He's got some good things too that I'll have him mention at the end, but he said, like, you guys are always wondering what's that courthouse experience going down the steps and watching them. He actually said you can go to YouTube and actually see clips of it. So you don't even have to drive down there to experience. So.
I was trying to watch it in my car on the way here, but it's so it wasn't really flowing too well. And good evening, or good morning, I should say. I'm looking forward to tonight already. Thanks for having me out here this morning. I appreciate it. I put together this talk, and it's kind of just in a rough draft form right now because it's the first one I've done. So, as you're experimenting, I'm experimenting on you right now. So that's good news. But the outline that I've come up with is I want to discuss a little bit about the California Foreclosure Prevention Act. Of course, this is the act that's causing big delays in the foreclosure process. And you've probably noticed that you see notices of defaults that are recorded, and sometimes a year goes by before a trustee sale is recorded. So that is in part of the reason that that's happening. We'll go through the foreclosure process, and again, I'm sure you've all gone through this many times, so we're going to just kind of give you a little update on that. Knowing what you're buying, I want to go through just explaining what you need to look for if you're either trying to do it. I don't know if any of you in here are attempting to start buying some foreclosures, or you'd like to experiment with that, or you have clients that are looking into that. Knowing what you're buying is pretty important. I have a lot of document samples for you. I don't know how long you've all been in the business, but you've probably been in it for a long time, and you may not have ever actually looked at a notice of default or notice of trustee sale and where on the document to look for the important information. So I'm going to share that with you. Then I have some interesting IRS lien information and redemption rights. Everybody's heard of the 120-day right of redemption that the federal government has to take back a foreclosure after it happens. Well, I actually have a sample of that document in a situation where that happens, so you can look at that and see what that is. And lastly, I have a sample of the waiver of a redemption right. So if you're dealing with a foreclosure that has that 120-day in place and you want to get around that, this is the kind of document that you have to obtain in order to consummate your sale. Let's start with the Foreclosure Prevention Act. It went into effect on May 21st of 2009. There was another part of this that originally went into effect September of 2008 that called for the additional disclosures. And I have some information I'll share with that as well. What it does, in a nutshell, is it extends the foreclosure period by an additional 90 days. In the past, we could go from start to finish of a foreclosure in about 111 days, which is about 4 months. With this new act, it takes almost twice as long. That's 7 months now. The prerequisite for that is it has to be owner occupied. So there's rules that go along with this. So this is not going to help any of your investors, second homes, third homes, whatever they may have. And it only affects loans that are first loans from January 1st of 2003, January 1st of 2008. So they had to originate within that time period to qualify. There is a loophole for the exemption that the lenders can take advantage of. Of course, the lenders always have an out to try getting out of these new regulations that are put in. And there is an exemption that they can exercise if they have a comprehensive loan modification program. And the young lady earlier was alluding to a problem she was having on a short sale acceptance where they actually asked her to come in with a bid that was lower than the listing price to make the short sale happen. And I have a feeling that a lot of these lenders are working within, percentage parameters, that if it comes in at a certain percentage, that they have to really make efforts to do a loan modification as opposed to going forward with a foreclosure or a short pay. And none of these rules are crystal clear. That's why it's so difficult for all of us working in the industry right now. They're kind of making it up as they go along. The law is set to be repealed January 1st of 11. But like a lot of these things that go into effect, they do have the right to extend it if they like. The foreclosure process is changed in a couple ways. Before an NOD is recorded now, 30 days prior to that action happening, they have to make some efforts to contact the owner of the property. And they have to be real efforts. They have to make 3 phone calls at 3 different times of the day. And this all has to be documented or they can't record the NOD. They have to send out, you either have to go out to the property and try to contact them. They send letters. They have to do all these extra steps now before they even get to the NOD recording. In the past, you just don't make your payment after that first month, and they could, at their will, record the NOD at any time. So this is an additional step that they've had to make. Then they can record their notice of default once they do all that due diligence. And after 3 months, they'll set that sale date. Now, if it falls into some of the parameters of the Foreclosure Prevention Act, they have to wait an additional 90 days. So that could take that NOD recording from 60 to an additional 90 days. So it can really extend the foreclosure part. 14 days prior to the sale, to the actual sale, they have to record the notice of trustee sale. I'm going to show you a sample of that where you can look at all the information, and you probably dealt with a lot of situations where the foreclosures are consistently being postponed. And one of the most popular questions in our office that comes up from our customers is once they postpone the foreclosure or a certain amount of period of time goes by after they record the NOD, do they have to republish? Do they have to restart their foreclosure? And the answer is no. They can sit on their notice of default as long as they want. They can sit on their notice of trustee sale as long as they want, as long as they don't rescind it. And they can continue to postpone their foreclosures as many times as they like, and then go right to the foreclosure sale. Like I said earlier, you can look up some of these sales on YouTube, but I read an interesting article the other day up in Washington that was talking about in a day they may have 85 foreclosures set or scheduled for that morning, and about 85% of them get postponed. But part of the documents I'm going to show you today, you can actually call, and there's websites on some of these trustees where you can see if the sale's been postponed.
Why? Why do they get postponed?
They get postponed for several reasons. They can get postponed because of a bankruptcy filing. They can be postponed because they're trying to work out a short sale. They can be postponed because maybe the borrower started making some payments, so they're going to try to give them some more time. It's usually at the request of the borrower.
Is it tied in to the Prevention Act at all? If they don't meet the if they meet the guidelines, can it be postponed?
Well, they can't really go to sale until they have met the guidelines of the Prevention Act.
Okay.
So some of the loans that went into default, like in between when these laws took effect, that could postpone some of the foreclosures as well.
And then Mike, if I can jump in, one of the other questions that I get quite often is, it's gone to notice of sale, it gets postponed, and you've got a buyer that wants to buy that property. Either it's off the market or it never was on the market, whatever. And you're like, well, who do I contact? Well, bottom line, you can't contact the bank because the bank doesn't legally own it. Even though they're in the process of foreclosing on it, they can't talk to you about it because it's not their property to talk to you about it. So really, the only is you got to get hold of that homeowner. If the homeowner is just walked away and you have no idea of how, there's nothing you can do. You can't call, let's say as a Bank of America, you can't call an asset manager at B of A that you may know because it's not their asset yet, and they have no idea when it's coming in, and there's just nothing you can do. It's just kind of in limbo.
They can't set a precedence and start a short pay sale without the owner's permission.
No, they're not. They don't own it. They legally can't enter into a contract. They can't talk to an interested party. It's not their property to negotiate. And so it's just it's in limbo. There's just nothing you can do. The inevitable is going to happen on it, but there's nothing that you can do to try and step in and prevent it, correct?
Absolutely. But if you do know, ask